Igniting, inspiring, and evoking the fire within.
We're going to John Wayne through this, and we can't. That's not how it works. And when you look at history and you look at the way the world has evolved, there are so many tribal cultures because people need help. We weren't meant to do this, on our own.
You're listening to the What's Your Inspiration podcast with Fox Beyer.
Hello and welcome to episode 58 of the What's Your Inspiration podcast. Today's guest is a recommended friend from last episode, Jim Mulvey. She is Suzanne Casamento, a storyteller of young adult novels called Fingerprints and Choosing Tally. She's going on to her third book and is starting her search for the right agent. Suzanne, how are you today?
Hi, Fox. I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I'm like I said, I'm better than I deserve. If I were any better, I'd be twins, and I'm glad to have you on.
I'm glad to be here too.
You came highly recommended by my last episode's guest, Jim Mulvey, and you knew him years ago.
Yes,
and he's a more recent friend for me from the last 10 years. But I'm glad you came through the recommendation, and it's one of the questions I'm going to ask at the bottom end of the podcast. So if you think about who you would want to hear on another episode as we go on.
Okay.
So here we go. You're an author, okay, of young adult novels, and I just read the book Fingerprints, and we talked about it pre-episode, and how much the fact that I am not I'm an avid reader, but not a quick reader. And I read it in 24 hours just because I connected with it so much. So kudos to you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That makes me feel great. I love that you that you got sucked in. That's the goal.
I definitely did. I'm taking graduate classes right now, and I thought maybe I should be doing those, but no, I did not. I skipped some reading. Sorry, of my graduate classes because of how engaging Fingerprints was. But as an author, you've had these two books published, Fingerprints and Chasing Tally, and soon a third. And you've also had articles published in 17 and Teen. Can you give some advice to young authors? Is writer's block real? And if it is, what's the best medicine for it?
Oh, those are tough questions. Okay. So, as far as advice for young authors, just write. A lot of people will say, I'm not a real writer. I want to be a writer. And as far as I'm concerned, if you write, you are a writer. So just continue to write. And what's really, really cool for young authors and authors today is that there are so many outlets to write for. When I was starting out, I went to college. I went to Emerson College, and I got a degree in creative writing. And I took a class it was called Writing for Magazines. And in that class, we learned how to pitch magazines and send them stories. And during that class, I pitched 17, and I got a letter from the editor, and she said, this isn't the right story for me, but I really like your writing, and I would like you to continue to send me ideas. And I took that letter and I smoothed it out and I put it on the fridge and I looked at it every day. And I was like, yes, I'm finally, someday I'm going to get published by 17. And I kept sending them articles and ideas until finally they did publish one of my stories. But my point is, then there weren't many outlets. You could pitch magazines, you could pitch literary magazines, you could pitch women's magazines or teen magazines, but now you can just write and put your work out there, and it could be on your own blog. You can tweet poems. There are so many different ways for you to get your work out there, and that's super exciting. And plus, there are so many different kinds of publications now, like huge blogs that publish all kinds of writing. And so just do it. Just write. And as for whether or not writer's block is real, Everybody's process is their own process. So with the book I just wrote, I actually started it in 2016, and it's a funny story. So I went to this energy healer, and she was doing some energy healing on me, and she said, your chakras are all blocked up. I'm going to clear them, and you might feel like writing. And I said, oh, that'd be great, because I hadn't written anything since or any books since I finished Choosing Tally, which was in 2010. So so she did this energy healing on me, no idea what she did. And about 10 days later, I was sitting on the couch, watching TV, and it was like I was a zombie. I need to go right now. And I sat down at the computer and I just started writing this story. And I didn't know who this main character was. I'd never even thought of her before. She's an adult. She's 38 years old. She's not, normally I usually write about teenagers.
Right.
And I just wrote out 10 pages, just totally, completely. It was like I channeled them. And I'm sorry, 12 pages. And when I went back and reread them, I realized, oh my God. So in the scene, the main character is standing in a hotel in Hollywood. And I realized that while the energy healer was doing her work, I had a flashback of being in that hotel in Hollywood.
Wow.
And yeah, it was crazy. And so but then I didn't work on that book again. I mean, I think a few weeks later I wrote 60 more pages or something, and then I didn't touch it for maybe 8 months or something. And then I wrote another 100 pages, and then I cut 60 more pages, and then I went back and I wrote some other pages, and it took me seriously 4 years until I finished this book. But there were months on end where I never even touched it. So it was a really weird process. Whereas Choosing Tally and Fingerprints, I wrote, within months. I mean, I think I finished Choosing Tally in about 6 months, and I think I finished Fingerprints in about 8 months. And then, of course, there's always the revising process. But my point is that it's always different for everybody. So you may feel blocked, but then all of a sudden you might write 65 pages out of nowhere.
Right. I was going to ask if energy healing became part of your routine to write, but obviously I don't think it did.
Well, I have. So I actually have gone on what I consider a spiritual journey over the last, I would say, 6 years or so. And I do a lot of energy healing and different types of different kinds of things that my mother considers totally weird.
Never ends, right?
Yeah, to kind of tap into creativity, but it helps me. So I think everybody should just do what works for them.
I need help with my synapses, to be honest with you. So if you could, you could do that,
Have you
Synapse,
tried EFT?
It's a brain thing. You know what that is, a synapse.
Yeah. Have you tried EFT tapping, perchance?
Suzanne, I didn't even know you could do anything for synapses.
Sure.
Really?
You can do yeah. So, well, EFT tapping, it's a technique. Google it, and then there are videos on YouTube. But it's a technique of tapping and then talking, at the same time, and you basically reprogram your body, and you can reprogram your brain using it. We'll talk about that offline.
I think I just need to get some sleep for now. Maybe that'll help.
That too.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So most, as you said, most of your novels or writing is geared toward young adults and spotlight relationships. But here's a quote from Fingerprints that I found engaging, telling. It goes like this: "No, Savannah, not telling anyone is what's crazy. You can't just pretend this isn't happening." So, guys, my question is, can you share a little bit about identifying red flags in relationships in relation to that book?
Sure. Sure. Well, I think, I mean, that quote in particular is really interesting because I think that we, as a society, tend to stifle problems, and we also. So I had a therapist who called it John waning, where she would
Yeah.
hook her fingers into her
Yep.
belt loops and sort
Yep.
of mosey on, and we're going to John Wayne through this, and we can't. That's not how it works. And when you look at history and you look at the way the world has evolved, there are so many tribal cultures because people need help. We weren't meant to do this, on our own. And I think that's one of the, I think it's interesting that you noticed that message in the book. But, part of Savannah's journey is realizing that it's okay to ask for help.
Yes.
And yes, so that's
And
the
you
first
should.
thing.
And you should.
Yes, of course you should. That's why you have friends. That's why you have family. And if your family is not is not helpful to you, or on the same
But not that outlet, right? Yeah.
yeah, then find a friend, find a trusted adult, like you and I were just talking about in our pre-conversation. Fox is a teacher, and and he has had students come to them and share traumas, and there's no greater gift for an adult or a teacher to give a child than a safe place. I mean, to be that trusted adult that they feel confident enough talking to. What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, it makes you think of my seventh grade math teacher and high school baseball coach. Suzanne, he had a poster in his room, and you and I know these posters, these got milk posters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had a bunch of them in the room of all these famous athletes. And he would white out the word milk and he put math on all of those posters. And he had another one that basically said, overall, the classroom has to be a safe place. And
Yes.
yeah. I definitely try to make whatever environment that I'm in a safe place.
It's wonderful. Thank God for teachers,
Thank goodness for mine. They got me somewhat right, along with my parents. So and my coaches and mentors as well. We really jumped from the funny to the serious there, Suzanne.
No, well, sorry.
No. It's part of my questioning to you, but I think
Yeah.
we're sharing stuff that's relevant that happens to a lot of people in all walks of life. Get
Mm-hmm.
help. You have a right to your feelings, and you should get help. It's almost wrong not to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you're denying yourself. When you don't get help and you don't explore the issues. And by the way, when there is a trauma, and especially a trauma of abuse, it will keep coming up and keep coming up and keep coming up. I mean, you won't be able to stop thinking about it. You won't be able, you'll see stories and headlines, and I mean, it will just boom, boom, boom until it gets your attention enough to actually do something about it. And when you don't take the steps to heal, and when you don't take the steps to address those problems, you're actually denying yourself the right to a peaceful, happy life.
Freedom,
Freedom.
peace of mind.
Peace of mind. You're so right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish would have read your book a little bit earlier, Suzanne. It would have helped me along the way. Probably if I read it at 24, and well, it wasn't published then, but maybe if I read it at 35 rather than 42, I would have been a little bit better off. But nonetheless, Fingerprints. It's a young adult novel. I am not a young adult, but I enjoyed it very, very much.
Oh, thank you.
Very,
Yeah.
very relevant and appropriate and powerful and real.
Thank you.
You bet. Hey, it's time for a game called What, Which, and Where. I'm gonna quote someone that you admire, and you're gonna try and guess who it is or was. Are you ready?
Sure. Let's do it.
I like the enthusiasm. Here's the first quote in What, Which, and Where, Suzanne. There is no greater burden than bearing the untold truth inside you.
Oh, well, this definitely pertains to our conversation. let's see. I'm not sure who the quote is from, but I did mention some of the people that I do admire, so maybe it's from one of them. I would guess Maya Angelou or Oprah. It's one or the other.
You got to choose one. You can't choose both.
Oh, come on.
Two people.
All right, let's go with Maya Angelou.
You are correct.
Aha.
You are
Yes.
correct. So my break off question from that is does storytelling for you allow you to bear untold truths inside you, and how do you gain fulfillment from doing so?
Absolutely. I mean, especially in the case of Fingerprints, Fingerprints is loosely based on a relationship I had in high school. It's also loosely based on my family. And Savannah, the main character, her mother has just remarried, and she has the stepbrother and stepsister that she can't stand, and she's in a relationship with a guy who's controlling and abusive, and all of those elements really whipped up the perfect storm for him to be able to abuse her, because she felt, what's the word? She felt like an outsider in her own home, and a lot of that is based on my experiences when I was a teenager. But also, what's really interesting, and especially with my latest novel, All the Moments in Between, is that there's so much in the subconscious that comes out that I didn't even know was there.
Unbared. Yep.
And even when I'm writing about characters that have nothing to do with me, like Kate, the main character in All the Moments in Between, has nothing to do with me. I mean, she has cancer. She has been dumped by a fiance. She's in a relationship with a married man. She's a disaster. And none of that has anything to do with me, but her feelings and her emotions and bits and pieces suddenly appear on the page, and it's like, oh,
that's me. I
resonates with me. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So I think for a lot of writers, writing becomes therapeutic, and it sort of helps us excavate things that we didn't even know were affecting us. It's pretty wild.
Certainly been that for me. It's certainly been that for me.
Yeah. Very cool.
It is. It's definitely therapeutic. And in your case, your therapy has been therapy for a lot of people. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So 1 for 1 in what, which, and where. Here comes number 2. Every failed relationship, active abuse, and unfulfilled promise works out for your good.
I don't know who said that, but it sounds a lot like a quote that I had mentioned to you earlier. That is, it's a quote I love, and it's man's rejection is God's protection. It almost feels like those two quotes are linked. I can't remember the name. He's a reverend, and I actually had to look up who said the quote, because I only know the quote. I didn't know who said it, which is terrible. I should learn to attribute my sources, but I love that quote so much because and it's not just about relationships. Man's rejection is God's protection. It's in everything. It's a reminder that if you don't get the job, it's because it wasn't the right job for you. Or, if you don't get the apartment you wanted, it's because it wasn't the right one for you. And I think that's such a difficult lesson for so many of us to learn, because we get this idea of exactly what we want, and then when we don't get it, we're so upset. And you kind of have to let go and just say, okay, God, universe, whatever it is that you believe in, take it away. I surrender. I'm going to let you do your thing.
Right. That's the typical human reaction is, doggone it, should have been mine. Why? But
Yes.
The other things that make me think of we should always look forward. Your eyes are in the front of your head, not behind. So where we keep looking ahead. Again, you have a right to your feelings. You should be frustrated. You worked hard to possibly get that apartment or get that book published. But if it's not to be, then it's not to be, and you look for other options.
Yes.
No one
Yes
wants
to
to be around a
everything.
grouch.
I didn't hear the last thing you
No
said.
one
Sorry.
wants to be around a complainer or a grouch, right? A woe is me type, right?
True. Very true. But all of those things you said are totally right. You have a right to your feelings. You have a right to be upset about it. You have a right, I mean, you're absolutely right. But again, the struggle is to, let go of it.
It's a
I
process.
don't know. That's been one of my hardest lessons.
I still struggle with it to this day. To this day. It's a good poem online. I forget the man's last name. His first name is Shane. He's got a really good poem. It's about abuse, and it's called "To This Day." He's a great poet, and I've done a TED Talk and a bunch of other things. It's
Very
a really
cool.
long last name that begins with a K, and if I said it now, I would totally butcher it.
All right. Well, we're going to have to look it up.
Yes.
Maybe we can put it in the show notes after we find it.
Yes, for sure. So, Shane, great poem, man, great poem. Yeah. So, the man's name, M. Stanley Butler.
Oh, thank you.
There it is.
Thank you so much.
But I've got to give it to you because you described it so well and where it was where it actually came from. So you are 2 for 2.
Whoa.
Yes.
This is awesome.
Yes. Starting off, it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day.
It already is.
It already is. Suzanne, not all heroes wear a cape, but if you had a chance to take a 1-hour car ride with the following 3 people, who would it be and why? You can only choose one. Would it be Maya Angelou? Would it be M. Stanley Butler? Or would it be Oprah Winfrey?
It would be Oprah. I mean, slam dunk. Absolutely. Of course, I would be so, I think my emotions would be so cuckoo that I wouldn't even be able to make sense. I'd be one of those people who fangirls, cries, sobs, I would be a disaster. That is
What would be the first question you would ask her once you would get over past all of the sobbing?
I don't know exactly what I would ask her, but I would thank her because I think, I watched the Oprah show. I started watching the Oprah show when I was a little kid, and I watched it until it ended in, I don't know what year that was, maybe 2010 or something, or 12. And Oprah started talking about the things that nobody was talking about. She made it okay to talk about abuse. She made it okay to talk about spirituality, and really kind of differentiate what that means in comparison to religion. And she made it okay to talk about God and who's God and what does God mean. She taught me so much. She taught me to contemplate and consider and envision what I wanted. And I don't, it's kind of amazing the impact that she as one person has had on society. I'm such an admirer. Really, I don't think I'd be able to get a question out. I'd be just like shaking and sobbing the whole time.
I would understand. She was real about her struggles, and she was authentic and taught you to be authentic.
Yes.
People to be authentic, or tell you the value of being authentic, maybe.
Yes. And that's such a great point. She modeled authenticity. She on national television talked about being sexually abused as a child. And because she did that, so many other people were able to actually address their traumas. You're so right. I think that's probably the most powerful thing that she did.
Yeah, I mean, you said her name right away. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it, or maybes. It was Oprah all the way.
Yeah, I am a fangirl. I actually went to her 2020 tour in I think it was in February. It was right before shutdown, and saw her live. It was in an arena setting, and it was amazing. She's such a powerful speaker.
Yeah, she is. I mean, she is. I mean, I haven't seen her live, but if I didn't take any pointers from her, I'd be an idiot. I'd be an idiot. I'd be an idiot. Suzanne, I want you to share some advice. What advice do you have for people who feel like they've hit rock bottom and they're in a abusive relationship?
Oh, well, I think we've talked about, we've already touched on some of it, and the key is to, well, first of all, you need to recognize the signs, because abusers are so good at what they do because they're so good at gaslighting. And the term gaslighting comes from I think it was a play where there was a man who kept lowering the flame on gas lights, and the woman kept saying, "It's why is it so dark? It's so dark in here." And he was saying, "It's not dark. What are you talking about? You're crazy." And so that's where the term gaslighting came from. But basically, it's when an abuser will convince you that everything is your fault. Nothing is his fault. So it's all your fault. And it's very difficult when you are beaten down, because it becomes so emotionally exhausting. You cannot even argue anymore. All you want is the voice to stop. You just want him to shut up. You know what I mean? And so it's it becomes so overwhelming that sooner or later you're so broken down that you start to believe all those things. You start to believe that you're not worth it. You start to believe that you're terrible, you're ugly, you're unworthy, you're stupid. And that's when the abuser has you exactly where he wants you. And in addition to that, they systematically do the same things. So it starts as like a very a slight comment of, "Are you really going to wear that?" And then it becomes, "That shirt is or that skirt is so short. You're only wearing that because you want to flirt with other guys." And then it becomes, "You're a slut." And then it becomes, "You're stupid." And then it becomes, so it's very gradual, but it becomes to the point where you just can't fight back anymore. And then in addition to that, they systematically isolate you. So the idea is, "Well, I don't like your friend. I don't like your friend, whoever. You can't hang out with her. I don't want you hanging out with her anymore. Well, she's trash, or she's this, or whatever." And then they, even your family, they will work hard to isolate you from your family, especially with adults. So when this happens to adult women, and it happens to men too, but when it happens to adults, and women can be abusers too. I don't mean to stereotype by saying he, but they will isolate you from your family members, and so then you're alone. So at that point, you have no one to reach out to, and at that point, you feel completely helpless. And so earlier, when we were talking about your student who came to you and talked about her trauma, thank God she was in school and she had
Right.
you to talk to. Some people are completely isolated to the point where, where these people are at home and there's no one to talk to. And that is one of the most horrible parts of COVID.
Yes.
People people who were already isolated are so isolated now they can't even leave the house to at all, and that to try and get any sort of help. And also, they're, if especially for kids, I'm sure you've seen this, I'm sure in your classroom there's one or two kids where that your class is a safe space for them, and it may not be safe at home. And so while they've been having virtual school, their only safe place is gone. Like, that is horrible.
It is. It is. It is. That's something I need to remind myself over and over and over. Over the years, you have a bad lesson, or people aren't paying attention, blah, blah, blah. Things didn't work out the way you wanted them to. Maybe that's not the point.
Yeah.
Maybe the point is you're there, so you're providing a safe space, place for your students. And
Yes.
there's nothing more important than that.
Nothing more important than that. And that is why teachers are just the most valuable people in our society. And we really need to learn to, and when I say we, I mean, a society and a government structure in general, but, teachers are not paid, but teachers should be paid. Teachers are not, they don't have the benefits and security and that they deserve. It's that whole thing needs to be rethought. I almost said rethought.
Restructured.
Yeah, restructured, because really you're doing the hardest work and you have the most responsibility. It's unbelievable when you really think about it.
Yep. And second to a parent or anything like that. So,
yes.
Yeah. Really cool. Really cool. Suzanne, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Do you want to share any of your contact information with the listeners?
Sure. You can, let's see, all my social media. You can follow me on Twitter at Suzanne Casamento, and I'm also my Facebook author page is also Suzanne Casamento author. Yeah. So I would love to engage over social media. That'd be great.
Start a conversation in a relationship. Outstanding. Yeah. Outstanding. Again, I've really enjoyed this time, and thank you for coming on today.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
It sure has. That'll wrap up episode 58 of the What's Your Inspiration podcast. Suzanne and I will talk to you all later. Take good care.
You have been listening to the What's Your Inspiration podcast with Fox Beyer, because impact on each other is the greatest currency you could ever have.